I'm Julie Wake. I'm the Executive Director of the Arts Foundation of Cape Cod, and we are here in Wellfleet, Massachusetts on Cape Cod today with artist Robert Henry, otherwise known as Bob Henry. Thank you for having us in your studio today.
It's my pleasure.
It's so amazing to be here and surrounded by this art, and we're really looking forward to digging into who Bob Henry
Good.
who Bob Henry is.
Yeah.
So I have, we've been talking for the past half hour, all the questions, but the first question I want to ask you, that I learned about you through The Great Love of Your Life.
Yeah.
So I would love to, can you talk a little bit about The Great Love of Your Life?
Sure. Be delighted to.
Okay.
Selina Trieff was her name. She passed away 7 years ago after 15 years of serious physical problems. But we met at Brooklyn College. We were in art classes. We were a couple of the very few serious art students in the department at the time. Most of the students were there thinking of pursuing a career in art education in the schools. But Selena and I were both very serious as artists. And at the time, I was engaged to be married to a woman who, thank God, broke up with me. So we started as friends.
Yeah.
They used to be the studio classes were in the afternoon from 2 to 6, and at 4 o'clock there was a break, so we'd go down to the cafeteria, and Selena and I might be in different classes, and I would wait for her to show up. Because she was so bright, and unlike the Selina Trieff that was there in her later days, she was very neat. And her mother, who was a wonderful person, always ironed her blouses, and she was this sweet, beautiful, young, energetic woman. And as I said, luckily, my fiancé broke up with me. So Selena and I progressed from being friends to being lovers. And I convinced her to come up to Provincetown with me after I had studied with Hofmann for, I think, 2 years. And her father didn't like that idea at all. So it caused some problems with the father, but we lived together in this little cottage in back of what is now the Fine Arts Work Center. It was before the Fine Arts Winter Center started.
Yeah.
And it was one floor with a kitchen and a room, a living room, I guess, and a sleeping loft. And I set up an easels on the low ceiling, made easels that were attached to the ceiling beam. And she was on one side, I was on the other. I mean, it was just, we were just meant for each other.
Yeah. That must have been incredible to have a partner that got it, that was so committed like you to the work.
Absolutely. I would endorse any, well, it depends on the people, never mind any.
What's your tip?
A pair of artists can get on very well together. And I know a number of artist couples who do. And the thing about it is that you really support each other. No matter what happens, you support each other. And that's so important, especially when you're young and you're not sure of who you are and how good you are. So thick or thin, we're always there for each other. And that's really what made, a wonderful union.
the magic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah.
And so you were both here in Provincetown.
Yeah.
So your connection is Hans Hofmann. Is that why you came to Cape Cod and
Well, the
Provincetown?
connection was Brooklyn College,
Okay.
but I had previously studied with Hofmann, so I thought Selena might be interested in it. Also, I wanted her to come to the Provincetown with me. So I introduced her to Hofmann,
Yeah.
who was very influential in her development as he was in mine.
Tell me a little bit about the relationship with Hofmann that you had and how he inspired you.
Okay, I'm going to go back a little before
Sure.
Hofmann. I went to a technical high school, Brooklyn Tech, not because I was interested in anything technical, but when I was in 8th grade, I had a teacher who said, "You're good in math, you ought to take the test to get into this special school." So, I mean, I was 14 years old. What did I know? I took the test, I got in. And that affected my life an awful lot because it was an all-male school. So I wasn't in contact with the neighborhood girls. And after I graduated from high school, I didn't know what to do with myself. So I got into Brooklyn Polytech, which
Okay.
doesn't exist anymore. And I was supposed to be studying chemical engineering. And I realized in that first year that that wasn't for me. And luckily, I had two English teachers who really took to me because I wasn't like the normal engineering student. I was creative, and I was interested in things. And they advised me actually to quit school. And I had a couple of friends who were musicians. And one of them, named George Silver, lived close to me in Brooklyn, where I grew up. And I used to go over to his house, and in the basement of his mother's house, I didn't call it his father's house, his mother's house, he would get together with some of his buddies and do jam sessions. And I didn't play music, so I wanted to be part of this group. And I had some talent for drawing, so I started painting. And then I realized that that might be the future for me. So I quit Brooklyn Poly, got a job during the day in the mailroom at Lever House on Park Avenue. And George's elder brother, named Walter Silver, was a photographer who was living with the artist Grace Hartigan,
Okay.
who at that time was George Hartigan.
Okay.
Given the way women's artists were not received very well. And I kind of bugged her because I was so, not knowing anything, being just a beginner. What should I do? Where should I study? And she recommended Hofmann to me. So that's how I got to Hans Hofmann.
Okay.
And so I started with Hofmann as a relative beginner. I had taken a figure drawing class at the Brooklyn Museum, and that gave me some introduction. The teacher's name was William Baziodes. And I asked him who to study with, and he also said Hofmann. So I went to Hofmann. And that was in New York. I went at night after I finished my work at the mailroom at Lever House.
Wow.
And got to know all these other art students, very serious. And the first day I walked into the class, he was a nude model. And I'm looking at the work of the artists. They were all doing abstract paintings, looking at this nude model. And I'm thinking, how the hell does this happen? And he was a great teacher because he was very clear in what he wanted you to do. He was always supportive. And his instruction, which some people who are not used to this kind of thing are horrified by. Most of the work was in charcoal drawing on a full-size charcoal sheet of paper from the model, and he would go around the classroom and stand or sit, depending whether you were at an easel or on a workbench, and ask you to hand him some charcoal and a kneaded eraser and a chamois cloth, and he would start working on your work. Yeah, you gave that reaction, which is the reaction that a lot of people have.
Yeah.
None of the students saw it as an imposition.
Okay.
You were there because he was the master,
Right.
and you were there to learn from him. It was very different than studying in academia, where you have this teacher and that teacher and the other teacher, and one may be your favorite, but still, you're studying with the institution, not with the person. But in a Hofmann school, you came to study with Hofmann,
Right.
and that was his way of teaching. And people say they couldn't understand. Some people couldn't understand him because he had a thick German accent,
Oh, right.
Bavarian actually. I actually never had any problem understanding him. I understood pretty much everything that he said, but it wasn't the words as much as his demonstration of maybe if you do this.
Yeah.
He frequently would say something like, if you took that line and you move it 1 millimeter to the right, it'll be better. And so what I learned from Hofmann was the process of making art is the process of composing. And that's very different than the kind of academic, not such creative approach to art, where there's the subject matter and you put it down and then you compose it. And with Hofmann, you didn't do that. You composed the painting or the drawing.
Yeah.
And that's what you were doing. So I think of, and Selena did too, as painting and drawing as composition. That's what it is. So Hofmann, as I say, was very supportive. He was a very big man, very jovial. I said to you before that I saw him as my second father, because being a teenager wanting to be an artist rather than following the usual track, I, of course, was having problems with my own father.
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my father, in a way, always supported me. He wanted the best for me. But he came from a working class background, and he was afraid that as an artist, I wouldn't make it in the world. He also thought, because I was just generally troubled as a typical adolescent, that I wouldn't make it in the world anyway. So Hofmann was always there saying, you can do it, you can do it. I remember once one critique that he made kind of toward the end when I was studying with him. I was working on a painting, I think, which he had seen at one point, and he came back to see it again some days later. And he said, it's getting there. In 10 years, you'll be able to really do it. And some people are horrified about that. I took that as the greatest compliment, that he had this faith. One, that I would be doing it for 10 years. And two, that in 10 years, I would really be competent. So Hofmann for me was great, and for Selena also. And Selena always said, as I do, of course, Selena became a figurative painter. I go back and forth between figuration and abstraction. But she became a figurative painter, and she always claimed she was an abstractionist. And she always was looking at the forms of the spaces that were not the figure. Something that some people call negative space, which always arouses my ire, because I think that people don't understand the concept of negative space. It's just jargon for most people. What they're really talking about is background. And what Hofmann talked is there is no background. Everything is equally important. You're looking at shapes, you're looking at colors, you're looking at space, and try to forget what you're representing. Even if you're doing it representationally, not abstractly, you should be looking at the composition, the color, and the forms, and making a composition that has life to it. And Hofmann, in his own paintings, expressed who he was. He was, as I said, this big, energetic, jovial man, and that's what his paintings were. More and more as he matured. His paintings, in my mind, got much better after he stopped teaching. I felt he got trapped somehow in his teaching method, in his own painting while he was teaching. I felt there was too much drawing in his painting, even though he talked about you don't make the shape doesn't make the color makes the shape. It took him a long time to actually get to do that. And he started really doing it after he stopped teaching.
Wow.
So that's a lot about Hofmann.
Fascinating. So tell us about how, I love where this is going, because I'm looking at the paintings around us, and you had mentioned when I came in today that these had all been done this year, so the year of 2022.
Right.
How do you express yourself? I know that you evolve and change and don't put yourself in a box. So tell us a little bit about how you express yourself through your painting based on this like incredible timeline and history of work and teaching and living with another artist. Tell us about how you express yourself.
How I express myself. When early on, following Hofmann's teaching, I did what almost every artist in the school did, is I worked abstractly and with a palette knife and with strong colored paintings. And I was at the school from 52, 53. And somewhere about the mid-60s, I rediscovered drawing. And I realized that I had a talent for drawing, and I could make things up. I could just sit down with a pad and a pen or a pencil and make an image through the process of composing. And it was really a waste of time and paint to start without a drawing and to find the painting in the painting. That was my feeling at the time. Actually, I now think that there's no right way, there's no wrong way. And that method of working directly on the canvas produced results that you can't get any other way. But somehow I was destined to go toward drawing because I think that's where my real talent lies. And like I tried working early on the computer, and I didn't do it for very long because my hand wasn't there. And I realized that my strength is in my hand. So what I have done for most of the past 40, 50 years is I take a piece of paper and a pen. Most of the time I use a quill that I made from a turkey feather, or sometimes with a reed that I get out of the swamps, and sumi ink, and I just start making marks.
Okay.
And I start composing. One thing suggests another thing, and sometimes they're totally abstract, and sometimes an image appears. And I have hundreds, maybe thousands of those drawings, and periodically I go through the drawings of the last couple of years and find the ones that continue to hold my attention. And then I do paintings from those drawings. So that's my method.
Okay.
And people talk about, people always ask me the question, what was your idea when you did that painting?
Yeah.
And my answer is, painting and ideas do not go together. I had no idea before I started the painting. The idea comes at the ends of the painting, not before the painting for me.
Okay.
So to have the idea at the beginning tends to be, in my mind, kind of illustration. Whereas for me, the image is not I don't start with an idea and make an image of it. I make an image, and then it has some kind of resonance, different for different people, which of course is always true, but you don't always recognize it. Everybody sees the work differently. And sometimes people will see things in the work. I say, "Ooh, yeah, I didn't realize that, but wow, yeah, you're a good observer."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about these pieces behind you.
Well, they follow that.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
That exactly, yes. There were some drawings over there that they started with, and
Oh, okay.
the drawings were done in just that way,
Okay.
and they were done in charcoal. I stayed away from charcoal for many years because I found that early on I had been trained in the Hofmann method, and it was a method. Almost, it was hard to tell the difference between one student's work and another. As a matter of fact, Selena and I put our drawings together in a portfolio, which we lost track of for some years. And I found it maybe 30, 40 years after we did it, and neither of us could tell who did which drawing.
Wow.
In most cases, in some cases, yes, but they were so much alike we couldn't tell who did them.
Wow.
Just about 6 or 7 years ago, I got free of that,
Yeah.
and I could work in charcoal and not have it look like a Hoffman school drawing.
You broke it.
I broke it, yeah. So I did those drawings, and then I had done a series of paintings, I think 4 years ago, where I decided this is, I believe in playing games. And there are an infinite number of games you can play, which is one of the reasons why my work is so various, because I'm playing different games. So I decided I had a drawing and I wanted to do a painting of it, and I thought, well, I would do a sort of underpainting. And I thought, what color is the most unlikely color to do an underpainting in? I thought red. So I did underpainting in that kind of red and worked over it in other colors, and framed, I did, I think 4 or 5 of them, framed them in red. They really look good. They were in a show at Seashore Point in Provincetown. And so I had these drawings. I said, well, let me try red again. So that's what happened.
You and I earlier were talking about, your process, and I'm really curious about, the day. What does you're very routine. We were talking about being routine and structured, but also the ability to break our routines and do something different and be okay with that. But I'm curious about how you get into these flow states, you get in there and you start painting and you're there for hours and hours and hours. Is that something that you can relate to, or?
No, absolutely, yeah.
And how has it evolved over the decades of your time in the studio?
I don't think it's evolved. I think it's always been the same.
Yeah.
Like a little bit of an aside, somebody was talking about teaching art and how, you get a bunch of students who are not interested. And my reaction was, as soon as you pick up that pencil or that pen, you have to be interested. There's no way of doing it without getting involved in it. So when I start drawing or I go into the studio and I start working with paint, I'm totally, absolutely there. Which explains why, time can go by and you don't know how much time has gone by. Although when I was younger, I could work for many hours. And as I'm now 89, I don't have the stamina I used to have. So I tend to work in smaller 2-3 hour units. And my days are structured when I'm not here in the gallery. I get up, I open the computer, do the necessary email, Instagram, Facebook thing. Play the guitar for an hour or so. Exercise, walking 2, 3, 4 miles.
Every day?
Yeah.
Does that, okay, so you shared something with me a while ago that I think is really impressive, is that sometimes it takes a mile to do a painting.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that?
Yeah,
I
well,
think it's
what
so
happens is
interesting.
I measure my steps on the iPhone, and on many days I'll walk around the block a couple of times, or go out to the harbor
Yeah.
and walk around the marina a couple of times, or across Uncle Tim's Bridge, and I'll do 2.5 miles on that, and then I'll go up into the studio after lunch, uh, and uh, and then have dinner, take a short nap, sometimes go back up to the studio,
Yeah.
and at the end of the day, I've done 4.5 miles.
It's amazing.
Because one of the things that I learned from Hofmann, but this is not unique to Hofmann, it's what a lot of artists do, is you want to look at your art from various distances. You have to be up close to it to put the paint on, even though some artists, like Matisse, when he was in bed, used a very long brush. And I know some artists who also use very long brushes because it keeps you away from the painting, and it gives you limited control, which can have some positive aspect.
Yeah.
But when you look at a painting as an artist, or even as a spectator, if you know how to look, you look at it from a distance, and then you go up to it, and then you go back. I've said this a number of times. Whenever I go to the Metropolitan Museum, I always stop in front of a painting by Rubens
Yeah.
called Fox and Wolf Hunt.
Yeah.
And on the right side of it, there's the back of a horse, and there's a horse's tail.
Yeah.
And from 4 feet away, it looks like a horse's tail. From 3 feet away, it looks like paint. And I get a kick out of that, and I do that
Every
all
time.
the time, every time. It's, I notice in the gallery here, some people, especially since that space is narrow,
Yeah.
they look at the painting like this. They never step back. I'm tempted to say something, but I figured, what the hell?
What would you say?
Step back. You're not seeing the painting.
Right.
Yeah, but it's there.
You have to try
It's
it.
their red wagon.
It's there.
Yeah.
I love it. Tell me, you mentioned a little bit about social media.
Yeah.
I'm very impressed. You do a lot of social media, Facebook, Instagram,
Yeah. That's it. Email.
email. Do you like using social media?
No. I do it as a way of sharing my work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good tool to be
It's a
seen.
wonderful tool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, when you start, I don't chat with anybody, and there are people who say, "Hello, Bob, how are you doing?" And I've made the mistake 2 or 3 times of answering that, and I mean it never
weird.
ends up well.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Usually it's young women who are looking for partners.
They're looking for what?
The partners.
Oh,
Or they say they're a young woman, but who knows who the hell they
who
are.
knows? I know.
Yeah.
I don't talk to people online either. I think it's not
And
a good habit.
Sometimes I explain. I just use the internet for posting my work and seeing other people's work,
Yeah.
and that's what I use it for.
Yeah, it's been a really great medium for visual artists,
Yeah.
especially over the pandemic.
Yes.
How did the pandemic treat you? What was life like for you?
Left me alone.
It left you alone.
Well, there's one thing about being an artist. As an artist, you're in your studio by yourself almost all the time.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it makes very little difference. I got very lucky, though. I'm living here alone. Selena died. My daughters, who I love dearly, and who I'm close to emotionally, live in New York City. And I have 2 very good friends, Bob Rindler and James Connors, who I interact with. But then a couple of years ago, I was at the Wicked Oyster.
Yeah.
And I was getting together with a group of older guys, and we would get together once a month to talk.
Mm-hmm.
And this a group of people came in, and it sat at the next table.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them, as I was leaving, he called me over, and he said, "You guys are so interesting. I loved hearing you talk." So he made the first move. We became friends. And his name is David Simpson, and his wife, Kathy Fletcher, adopted me as a father. Her father had just recently died, and I reminded her of her father, so they adopted me. So during the pandemic, I had them. And we had a very small pod, and she was very careful. She said, "I don't want to be the one to kill Bob Henry."
Yeah, same.
Yeah,
I know.
same thing. Yeah. So that's how I got through the pandemic.
That's incredible. So the friendships, it's really interesting to hear you say that, because a lot of men specifically just don't have a lot of friends.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's lovely to hear that you've been able to, maintain friendships. Has this been something that, like, through your art has brought you together with kind of like-minded creative people?
Absolutely. Yeah. There are a group of artists who have been getting together once a month for 7 or 8 years now. That was started by Megan Hinton, and she called it Salon.
Yeah.
And we get together at different artists' houses, studios, and you can bring a work of art to show if you want, or you don't have to. And occasionally poets have come and read their poetry. And then you talk about the art. And that's a real important connection for me. And I've only got more respect for all the artists in the group with passing time, because they've all gotten better. It's just a very satisfying connection with people. The social part of it is wonderful.
Yes.
But also the sharing of the art itself is wonderful. So aside from Kathy and David and Bob and James, I have that connection. And of course, I go up to Provincetown to the galleries. And for a long time, I was very active in PAM. I was the president of the Board of Trustees at a critical time when they were wanted to renovate and expand the museum. And they recruited me to be the president. I had no desire to do it.
That's usually how it happens,
But they recruited me because they needed, as the president, an artist to have some.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and I had this interesting combination of being an artist, also having a background in Robert's Rules of Order. Where did I get the background in Robert's Rules of Order?
Yeah.
When I was a teenager, I belonged to a group that was an extension of B'nai B'rith.
Okay.
And there's a bunch of teenage boys, and we got together, we had meetings. What did we do with the meetings? We played around with Robert's Rules of Order. see who could capture the floor. So I was well versed in Robert's Rules of Order.
Wow.
Which came in very handy when I came to a meeting with the general, a meeting of the general membership.
Yes.
And they were objecting to the renovation, and I could shut them up if I wanted to by using Robert's Rules of Order.
That is such a good tool.
Yes, it is. And I still firmly believe in its usefulness, not necessarily for shutting people up, but for running an orderly meeting.
Yes.
But in most of these groups, people feel it's not friendly enough.
Okay.
It's too official. They want to be nice to each other. Which has its value also. Like I said
Right.
before, everything has its value.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. I want you to come to my board meetings and implement this for me.
I'll give you a copy of the book.
Okay, I think that's brilliant. That's
Yeah.
so interesting that you did that from a
Yeah.
young age.
Yeah.
And I think, when we're trained in the arts or go to art school or take art classes or workshops, there's the power of this conversation that we have with our peers, with our
Yeah.
teachers,
Yeah.
that I don't think mainstream students get.
Yeah.
I went to Mass Art, so I experienced all those critiques and the direct feedback, and sometimes it's great and some days are bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the power of being able to take the feedback and to think about things
Well,
and to
there are
share.
a lot of art teachers who are lousy teachers. There are no two ways about it.
What do you think makes a good art teacher?
Well, I taught a class at Brooklyn College. I was presented with the opportunity to give a seminar class in the master's program, and nobody. It was a very funny department. Nobody ever told me what I should teach. So I decided, well, these people are getting this degree because they want to be teachers. So I will talk about criticism.
Ooh, yeah.
And actually, I ran into a wonderful artist named Diana Horowitz, who has some beautiful paintings at the moment at the Schoolhouse Gallery.
Yes.
And I knew her when she was born. Her parents were my good friends. But she took that class with me. And just last time I saw her, she said, I want to thank you. Of course, she taught at Brooklyn College after I retired. She just retired. Shows how time goes by. That class was so useful to me in teaching. And what I taught was, don't say good or bad. Don't say, I like it or I don't like it. What the student wants from the teacher is the teacher's eyes. And what you ought to do is describe the painting. There were a series of steps. The first step was to describe the painting, which is not so easy. It takes training.
Yeah.
And then there was a second step and a third step, which we really got to, because it was so difficult to get to just describing. So that's one of the things about teaching is I think you shouldn't talk about likes and dislikes. You should lend your eyes to it. But I had an interesting lesson in teaching from Selena. Selena gave a talk at Southwest Connecticut State College, and I drove her there. And she gave a slide talk, which went very well. And then there was an MFA critique that she was to give. And there were, I don't know, 6 or 7 MFA students. And the students put their work up. And Selena said, in not so many words, but you're wonderful. I love it. And I'm sitting there, okay, that's nice. She does it for the first student. She does it for the second student. She was a good enough actress, so she didn't repeat the words, but it ended up to the same thing for all the students. And as I'm saying, I'm slinking in the chair thinking, they're paying you to critique the work, you're not doing it. So we drove back up here, and she got phone calls from the head of the department and the faculty saying, that was the best critique that there ever was.
Fascinating.
And I realized, yes, what the students want is encouragement. And that's what she did. And so I changed my teaching methods. And I stopped critiquing. And what I did was I'd work along with the students.
Yeah.
and played around with on my canvas. And then when I did something that I thought might help them,
Yeah.
I'd say, come over here, look at this.
Yeah.
This is what I did. And I never critiqued their work, and I just encouraged them. And those students are very loyal to this day.
I would just love for you to describe your art to us as if nobody's seen the art before. How would you describe yourself?
That's impossible.
It's so hard. I know
That's
I
impossible.
find myself having a hard time
Well,
describing.
for one thing, what I'm known for is being so varied in my art. Some artists have said to me more than one, more than two, more than three, you're so brave. And I'm thinking, I'm not brave at all. But they're thinking of the market,
Yeah.
and they know that you find an image, a style that sells, and you stick with it. And it's certainly true if you're in a gallery, and the normal gallery dealer wants you to do the things that sell. I'm really lucky I'm with Berta Walker, who never pulls that. She loves everything I do. So I don't have that burden.
Yeah.
But in any case, my work is very varied, and because I play around, I play different games, it's different. So my work sometimes is very effusive. Somebody described my work as being like, this is my work.
Yeah.
That was the description of my work. I thought that was great.
That's so cool.
Yeah. But it's not always like this. Sometimes it's like this.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like this. And,
Yeah.
I'm trying to express the entire range of emotions.
The last time I saw you painting up in your studio, and there's an example behind Tom there, I would describe you like this.
Yeah.
And then when I walked around your studio, then it's like this.
Yeah.
Like big, small, varied geometry throughout. It's really, there's not one piece, but it's still, I don't know, I don't think you like when I say this, but it still looks like you. It still looks like.
Why wouldn't I like that? I love that.
Okay, good. Because I just, you can see it when you're walking around the studio. It's like, wow, like this is really, I would describe you as fearless and brave as well.
But there's nothing at stake.
True.
It's easy to be brave if there's no danger.
That's true.
I see no danger. There's nothing that I'm brave about.
So we were talking about this earlier again, about as each decade goes by, so I have two questions. One is, what would you tell your younger self, the artist, now, today? What would you, what would you tell yourself?
Probably the biggest struggle was to believe in yourself. Yeah. I mean, it's when the first 10 years,
Yeah.
I thought it couldn't possibly be good
Yeah.
because I'm a beginner. I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
Yeah.
Looking back on it, I did some pretty goddamn good work early on.
Yeah, you did.
But I didn't believe in it, and I think you have to believe in yourself. And in a way, I must have, because I kept going. So I believed something about myself, but at a certain point, I mentioned to you before. At a certain point, I said to my son-in-law that I'm no longer trying to prove anything to my father. And I think it's true of pretty much every male that you have to prove something. Maybe some men probably have to prove something to their mother. It depends on the relationships there. But you're trying to prove it to some of your elders. It has to be, but it's great when you're not doing it anymore.
Yeah. And so when did that happen for you?
As I said before, it happened slowly over time. It wasn't in one moment.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking of when I was about 70,
Yeah.
it started easing up.
Yeah. And we were talking earlier too about this decade that you're in.
Yeah,
It's really, it's been a good decade for you.
it's been a good decade. Yeah, yeah.
What do
For
you?
one, I'm alive.
Right.
For two, I'm kind of healthy.
Yeah.
I'm pretty energetic.
Always.
Yeah,
Always moving.
yeah. And I've always been a student. One of the things that Hofmann taught, he wrote a book. It was called The Search for the Real. And I always took that literally, and that the practice of art was a search. It wasn't about the product, it was about the searching. So that's what I'm doing, is searching, and I continue to search.
And so we have a lot to look forward to in your 90s as you
I hope so.
continue to produce.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But and again, going into the idea of playing, I find different techniques, different ways of putting the paint on, taking it off. I once, when I taught, I always taught the same thing. Every artist teaches the same thing. You teach what you know, and the courses or the classes had different titles, but they're always the same thing. And one point I had a figure painting class, and I called it figure painting, and then a subtitle: put it on, take it off, move it around.
I like it.
Yeah, yeah, because a lot of people get stuck in, they put something down and they're stuck with the first thing that they did. And then what you have to build on that, and the start may have been totally inadequate, and the painting can never go anywhere if you're bogged down by the start. So a process of putting the paint on and taking it off is very important to interrupt what was there. And again, to move it around, try something, move it over a millimeter, as Hoffman said,
Yeah.
or move it over a foot. That's how you get paintings that are full of life, because the relationships develop, and the relationships reflect the way you feel on the inside. So through these methods, what I'm always doing is expressing myself. That's what art is about, as far as I'm concerned.
I love that. I think that's the perfect spot to end, unless you had any other. I mean, I love being around this artwork, and if there's anything else that we didn't cover.
Well, we covered a lot.
We covered a lot.
covered a
I
lot.
feel like I got inside your brain.
There was one thing I was thinking about.
Yeah,
Just
what?
because earlier today I was walking and I met a person who's in a book group that I'm in.
Yeah.
And one of the books is actually a short story, which I haven't read yet, by Philip Ross.
Yeah.
And she said to me, "I don't like Philip Ross." And I'm thinking, there's this concept that you have to separate the artist, or the author in this case, from the narrator. And she didn't do that. She didn't separate the artist from the narrator. And so there are paintings that I've done that represent things that are not terribly likable. But it's not me that's saying those things, it's the narrator in me. So you can't take at face value what's there on the canvas. You have to assume that the writer or the artist is expressing something that has a more general meaning than, Philip Ross didn't write something so that she would like it or anybody else would like
He
it.
had to get it out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And he expressed, Ross expressed things that are, I think, typical of many, if not all males, that women object to, of course, rightly so.
Yeah.
But aren't you doing a service by putting it out there rather than glossing over it? So that's where I would end the conversation.
That's so funny.
Put it out there.
Yeah. I was in one book club years and years ago, and it was my roommate's book club. I lived in San Francisco at the time. And the one book that I joined her book club in was a Philip Roth.
And you didn't like Philip Roth.
It was a very uncomfortable one to sit through.
Yes.
But anyway.
But art should make you uncomfortable.
Right.
Yeah. I mean,
That's right.
there's so many people around here who think that art should make you comfortable. I mean, they make it so superficial. And if there's one thing that I don't want my art to be, it's superficial.
Right. And that's why we love your work. We
Thank
love
you.
who you are.
Thank you.
So
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you for this time. It was so nice.
My pleasure. It's nice
be
talking
here.
to you.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. We are again in Wellfleet with Bob Henry, artist, legend here on Cape Cod. Come down to Wellfleet to see his gallery. When are you open?
I'm open during the season, Wednesdays through Saturday from 11 to 5. Today was a good day, even before you came in. There were some people who were very enthused about the work.
Oh, nice.
So I think there are a different group of people who come up to the Cape in the shoulder seasons.
Right. Second summer.
Less tourists and possibly more interested in art. So there'll be fewer people coming through, but maybe more interested in art. So I'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
I mean, luckily, I don't have a boss. I don't pay rent. I can do whatever I want.
You've got to come into this gallery. It's just very charming, very authentic. And thank you so much for supporting the arts. Again, I'm Julie Wake, the Executive Director of the Arts Foundation of Cape Cod. Thanks for joining us.
Wonderful.